Once again, good day, everyone. For this recording, we will continue our discussion on the remaining proponents of the philosophical perspective on understanding the self. We will discuss Sigmund Freud, then we will move forward to discuss Gilbert Ryle, and then we will proceed to Paul Churchland, and then we will end with the philosophical thoughts of Maurice Jean-Jacques Merleau-Ponty. Now let's get started. Let's discuss Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud is by profession a physician, but rather than engaging on his academic degree, he ventured on psychology, on understanding how human nature works, at the same time to unravel the mystery of some questions, especially questions asked during his time, when medical science is not that advanced to be able to provide us with very empirically sound answers. And thanks to Sigmund Freud, because of his venturing on this unknown world of human psyche, he was known to be one of the forerunners of modern psychology. As I have already discussed, modernity is characterized on the use of human reasoning. So here, Sigmund Freud would try to give rational explanation as to why we behave and what will be the causes and reasons behind these behaviors. And he is well known of his of the therapy, of the therapeutic relationship between the helper, between the professional mental practitioner, mental health practitioner, to the clients or to those who have questions and problems related to their psyche. We call this psychoanalysis. Psychoanalysis is, once again, a belief. It's a principle which Sigmund Freud opined to be the very method by which we can access, we can understand the reasons behind actions. And this can be done through analyzing the psyche of a person. So it's called psychoanalysis. It's analyzing the underlying reasons as to how a human person behaves and why we dwell so much on behavior as far as psychology is concerned. If psychology is the study of soul, later on we will take a look at psychological perspective, but to give you a brief overview of psychology, psyche is the Greek word for soul, and according to Aristotle, who defined the term soul rationally, it's a different definition when it comes to spiritual or religious aspects of the soul. For Aristotle, he defined soul rationally as the principle of life. Therefore, it is the soul that uh, that made the person or the made that thing living. No? So any living thing, all living things have soul, according to Aristotle. So that all living things, because they have soul, they can produce innate actions. Meaning to say, the action is not because something drive living things to move, rather than living things move in themselves, called it inherent actions. And kato siyang diretsoon sa human beings, what human beings produce as far as movement is concerned, because it moves on. We call this as behavior or actions. No? It's because of our behavior that we are satisfied, that we are compelled to believe, according to Aristotle, that we have soul, and that the quality of soul that we have is rational soul. Rational soul. We should behave according to reason. So, having said that, behaving according to reason, there are instances, no? And this is the question of Sigmund Freud. Why is that we behave sometimes uh, against reason? And so he proposed that this is because of the so-called unconscious or subconscious uh, restored, no? In the mind. They are restored uh, experiences, you know, and they are hidden in us, especially when uh, when we encountered traumatic events. You know, as far as Freud is concerned, these are all suppressed. These are all uh, kept in the so-called subconscious and unconscious parts, no, of the mind. Uh, for uh, behavior governed by rationality, these are at the level of consciousness. We are very conscious. We are very knowledgeable. We can define. We can reason out as to why we behave. We commit. We do such an action. But as to things that are done and unintentionally, quote unquote, unintentionally, then there are intervening reasons. There are hidden reasons. And for Freud, these are stored in our unconscious and subconscious minds. No? More than that, Sigmund Freud also believed of the so-called constructs of the personality of a human being. And this personality, these constructs of personality interact with each other, interact. And that this interaction and the continuous awareness of these constructs of personality that all of us have for ourselves would, according to Sigmund Freud, develop the sense of self. You are because you have personality. You have a personality. That is what Sigmund Freud will try to tell us. And you have to be selective. You have to be very keen and observant and know which personality, which aspects, which construct of personality must be utilized so that we create a healthier version of the self. What are these aspects according to Sigmund Freud? We have id, superego, and ego. This id this is not ID, rather this is pronounced as id, is the aspect of personality found in every person that is directed towards pleasure. Meaning to say, ikaw ni, aspito ni sa imong pagka-ikaw, na gusto lamang o pleasure. What would be the Bisaya equivalent term for pleasure? Something gusto nimo. So may gusto nimo. The level of want, the level of what your senses direct you to act. No? Kana bitaw gutumon ka, niya sa imong kagutom, makahunaw na kag di maayo, then you are driven by id. See, id is not reason-based, it is pleasure-based. For Sigmund Freud, id is what we share with the animals, no? Mo ni ang butang ato ang gi-share sa ilaha. So kung magpadata sa atong id, kung ikaw mubuhat, mulihok with your id solely, only, no? Id radyo imuhang imong ipatigbabaw, then wa kay kalainan sa mga hayop, no? So id actually would drive us to sa may kanindot sa id, no? Id would help us to maintain our life, no? Kay kung di ka tamukaon, kung imong gusto sa pagkaon, di nimo na siyang likayan, then kasakit ka, no? Well, it has a detrimental effect to yourself, to your physical body. So ang nakanindot ni id is siya mo amping sa lawas. So the tendency of id therefore is to be selfish, no? How about superego? Superego is directed to its consciousness, to its conscience. Sabot ana, ang atuang konsensya as far as our religious terminology is concerned is the same with superego as far as Freud is concerned. So superego is conscience. Sa tuang nahibawan sa konsensya mo ni ang inguni mo na ayaw na buhatan because it is not something morally right, it is wrong, it's something that is not socially acceptable by the society where we live in. So si superego is mao siya mo pahunong nato. Hunong na ang imong gibuk kay dili na siya maayo o dili na siya related. It is not acceptable sa society. So that is superego. So say kaayo ni superego is that it moderates us as far as our behavior, as far as our want, kanagining magpasuwabi. Because the problem of id is it has a tendency to be overwhelmed, no? Like gusto niyang kaon na lang dyan, paturato na lang siya kaon. So much that instead nga imuhang i-keep imong self healthy, obese na hinon ka, and you have the risk of a lot of health problems such as hypertension, and so on, no? And diabetes, and so on. Si superego would be the one to regulate, and its regulation is dependent on what is right and what is socially acceptable. And that's the problem of superego, because superego is being governed by others. So in this manner, you become selfless. Superego dictates us to be selfless. Kaya we accord our behavior according to what the society, according to how according to what our parents and mentors and guardians had taught us. So nagdepende. So the problem of superego is the veracity, ang katinuod sa imuhang nahibaluan. Okay? And ang mo regulate sa duha aron dili ka magpasuwabi sa imuhang self so much that you become selfish, as at the same time para dili ka mawad-an sa imong kaugalingon because you become so selfless. It's ego. Ego is the mediator between id and superego. It operates within the boundaries of reality. Its primary function is to maintain the impulses of the id to an acceptable degree. Okay? So, siya ang mupatunga sa duha. As far as id is concerned, nga dili siya mahimong obsess sa iyahang wants, so that it should only maintain to the degree of what is acceptable. At the same time, it will also consider super ego's too much inclination to others, because his ego now will try to operate at the realm of what is real kung sa may nahitabo karong panahon na. Okay, so ego is practical. Ego is very considerate. Ego will help us to get the good side of id and superego para dili ka mawagtangan o masubraan sa imong kaugalingon. Masubraan kay si id, mawagtangan kay si superego. Now let's continue. And that's the gist of Sigmund Freud's understanding of self as far as personality is concerned. You have a personality. Let's continue. Freud introduced the idea that the accumulation of the experiences of a human person helps him build his or her personality. Although such information is stored in a single area where we can access them anytime, introduce the level of consciousness. So this is what I talked about psychoanalysis a while ago. The conscious level is where the minority of our memories are being stored. The memories that are in the conscious is easier to be tapped and accessed, because these are desired memories. These are acceptable memories. However, the other one is the preconscious side, the middle part of the entirety of our consciousness. The memories stored in this area can still be accessed with little difficulty. Now, lastly, we have the unconscious. The area is where majority of our memories, since our childhood, are deeply stored, meaning nataguan there. It's very difficult to tap the memories in the unconscious. Would need a trained professional, several special techniques in order to make some memories resurface. So the psychoanalysis approach of Sigmund Freud will try to unravel those hidden reasons, hidden stored memories. Lastly, Sigmund Freud believed that we are byproducts of our experiences in the past. So that our personality, are all affected by our past. Id, as far as our instinct is concerned, superego, as far as from where we come, which origin, kaysa tang pamilya, kaysa tang society, nagpuyo, and that our actions are driven by the idea of resisting or avoiding pain, and are molded from our need for pleasure or being happy. So that ego would always be there to help us. If our ego personality, now ang kanila itong tanaw, no? Because we have this distorted understanding of ego. At ay panultihon sa Bisaya, no? Yung ego may nagpasuwabi, no? Na kundi siya, taas ka siyang ego. That's actually referring to either id or superego. No? The real ego, as far as Sigmund Freud is concerned, is the one that is driven by rationality. No? So tula ng tarongon pagsabot, ha? You may still use that Bisaya understanding of ego, but remember that that is not referring to Sigmund Freud's ego, because ego for Sigmund Freud is the one that is at the level of rationality. Kamao siya mo rason. Rason in such a manner na makatabang sa imuhang paglambo sa kaugalingon. Like kung if we follow it, you will really be obsessed of yourself. If you will follow superego, you will lose yourself. Okay, so that's the contribution of Sigmund Freud as far as understanding of the self is concerned, with his proposition on the personalities, the construct of personalities such as id, superego, and ego. Now, let's proceed to Gilbert Ryle. For Gilbert Ryle, the self is the behavior we manifest, the behavior we project, the actions we do. So because of our actions, we are noted, we are identified to be what kind of person we exhibit. And that's how simple yet very meaningful understanding of the self according to Gilbert Ryle. It is therefore an avenue, a good opportunity for us to reflect on the different behaviors we exhibit, we act every now and then. Because at the end, before we can act, we can actually think of what to act. And it's very practical in a manner that we are known by other people via our action. With that saying or that quotation, first impression lasts, it talks about the behavior we actually show to those who do not know us, those who are not acquainted with us. So for Gilbert Ryle, he did not believe on the so-called dualism, the difference between the mind and body. For him, these two are inseparable. Ryle does not believe that the mind and body are two separate entities, which is said to be evident in the unexplainable phenomena or the ability of the mind where the soul is considered. To him, for Gilbert Ryle, once we encounter our encounter with other people is actually based on what that person showed to us, of what we do, what the person do, how we act, and how we behave. It's not about what we thought of. To continue, Gilbert Ryle explained further that the self could be like a ghost in the machine. This view said that the mind is a complex machine with different functioning parts, and the intelligence and the other characteristics or behavior of man is presented or represented by the ghost in the said machine. He gave further explanation using an example imagining that if you are touring a visiting friend to the university that you are studying, and you brought him to the athletic center, library, building, etc. But then your friends ask, but where is the university? As such is the point of RYLE. All those places, buildings, and offices are the university, which supports his idea that the mind and the body is not necessarily separate entities. This notion of Gilbert Ryle is just to uh, give us that understanding that you cannot start creating a better version of yourself if you will stick to those things that are not essential. So much that after having distinguishing the parts, then what next must follow? Like for example, after having known that there are two entities that comprises a human being, such as the body and the mind. What's the next point of having an understanding of that? So for Gilbert Ryle, it is deemed useless to argue and to stick to that notion of the distinction. Rather, immediately exercise being cautious of your action, because at the end, it's our action, it's our behavior. Ato ang buhat maoy nagpaila kung kinsa ta, no? And it is kuan lang siya kaning needless to say that our action must have come from the mind. Kaya na ay ikaw nga nagunahuna nga nibuhat ana. So, balik ko na ko, for Gilbert Ryle, he find it useless and meaningful to see the distinction between the machine, the body and mind. It's like having egos in the machine, or having us, which is the university, having known all the parts of all places that comprise the university. Rather, immediately think that your behavior is a very important component, so that it's what will be seen by other people. And nindot kay na ang giingon sa pinakalas, no, that the way we talk, walk, and look is generally who we are as a person. So we have to present ourselves to others in a manner not just at the level of what is socially acceptable, because no, not just it's a matter of what is socially acceptable, but because that is what making you a better person at the end. Okay, the third proponent of the final set of thinkers, no, as far as the philosophy of the human person is concerned, is Paul Churchland. So Paul Churchland has this understanding that the self is the brain. No? If Gilbert Ryle believed that you are your action, for Churchland, you are your brain. So Churchland, a Canadian philosopher, focuses on the idea that people should improve our association and the use of words in identifying the self. That's why, for him, the self is the brain, because it's the brain that provides the ability to think. Churchland's work revolves around challenging of the notions and terms being used to explain behavior, or to explain how a person feels, thinks, and acts with regards to physiological phenomena this happening in the body, as well as definitions brought about by emotions. This is one of the notion of the concept of folk psychology, or also known as the common sense psychology. So for Churchland, we have to dig deeper. No, we should not only limit ourselves on understanding who we are on the facade aspect. When I say facade, it means on things that are tangible, such as our behavior, makitaan, to emotion, no, kaya ato man exhibit via our actions gihapon. So this so-called exhibition of our feeling, our thinking and acting is known as folk psychology and common sense psychology. The main philosophy of Churchland is eliminative materialism. Let's understand this concept, no? Eliminative materialism. Eliminative materialism opposes that people's common sense understanding of the mind is false, and that most of the mental states that people subscribe to in turn do not actually exist. This idea also applies on understanding of behavior and emotion. Let's proceed. Such denial of a Churchland, no, on the notion of common sense psychology leads him to further his neurophilosophy. It's the philosophy that has that focuses on its interest on the mind. He believed that to fully understand one's behavior, para ato ang masabtan, ato ang binuhatan, ato action, one should understand the different neurological movement of the brain that pertains to different emotions, feelings, actions, reactions, and how such brain movement affects the body. With this in mind, we can eliminate the ambiguity of subjective and baseless identification of the mind, behavior, and self in general. Because by understanding the different neural pathways, how they work, and what implications are those movements are to people, we will not only have the proof that there is a measurable classification on one's behavior. It can also be said that the constant movement of the brain can be the basis of who the person is. That's what this general statement of Churchland that states the brain as the self. So what's the point of this investigation of Churchland telling that uh, there is this real you who is the brain, and not just the facade which are manifested by your behavior. It's like this. We have to find an objectivity of who you are. No, you are thinking. You are not what you think. So it's like that. You are thinking because it's very objective that you have that capability to think. You have that potential to think uh, wise, not to think wise, rather than uh, to think only at the level of superficial thinking. Meaning to say, ang imuhang capability sa pagunahuna, gamitan na kamo na'y nakapahimo nimong tao. And at the same time, the quality of what you think is dependent on understanding your ability to think. Ang unsay imuhang mahibaw-an sa imong kaugalingon nagdepende na sa quality po sa imong pagunahuna. That's why it's very important for us to be educated, to have that genuine education. Kay usahay ang ato ang pagsabot sa pag-eskwela, kay kanaraman yung pag-enroll, no? But that is not the essence of education. Education means to form things that the, that things that are capable of becoming. No? You are educated because you have a potential to become. You have the potentiality because you have the brain. Your brain is so different from the brain of other animals. No? There are neuroscientists that would try to emphasize that there are capabilities, there are faculties of the brain which is intended only to human beings. No? Unsa na siya? The capability to think, the capability to decide. Because if we will try to dissect and see the anatomy of the brain, makita na to we shared something also sa other animals, no? Like the ability to feel pain, the ability to feel, the ability to uh, accept and understand what is pleasurable, parihata sa hayop, no? Sa baboy, iring, kanding, etc. But usa sa nakapalain nato is the ability to decide, no? To decide because you are able to weigh things. So in that manner, your action is no longer superficial in nature. Well, dili siya tira pasagad. If you remember uh, uh, Sigmund Freud's Ed, so dili ka wala nakagigawngan sa imong id, no? Rather, you are being driven by your ego. So if ato ang butangan og resemblance ang ilahang mga tumong, ang ilahang mga terminolohiya, Sigmund Freud's ego is Paul Churchland's brain. Okay, now let's move to the final philosopher that talks about what brain is, what the self is philosophically. And this is Merleau-Ponty, or Maurice Jean-Jacques Merleau-Ponty. He is a French philosopher known for his works on existentialism and phenomenology. And he has this understanding, his thesis, phenomena of perception, that is traceable to Gestalt ideation on the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Okay, this is Merleau-Ponty's contribution on the self, on understanding the self, the phenomenal perception. So let's take a look at this. The idea of phenomenology of perception, according to Merleau-Ponty, is divided into three divisions: the body, the perceived world, and the people and the world. The body, the perceived world, and the people and the world. The body that both receives the experience as well as integrates such experiences in the different perceptions. Body has that capability to receive the experience as well as to integrate that into a different perception. The perceived world, which are the accumulation of the perception, as integrated by the experiences of the body. So it's accumulated. It's the totality of what you perceived. And the people and the world, this refers to that which enable one to not only to be able to integrate the other objects in the world, but also to be able to experience the cultural aspect and relates to others. So the totality of this, the body, the perceived world, and the people in the world, comprises the self. Okay? So that at the end, it is very important to understand the self, not on the different parts of the self, but as a whole. The body, the perceived world, and the people in the world. And that would give you, I would say, the blueprint as to how to come up or to arrive at the best version of the self. It's like this. If you want really to improve yourself as to your image that you would like to develop for yourself, as far as your relationship with other people, because at the end we engage with other people, we talk, we converse, we forge relationship, relationship at the personal, professional levels, no, different levels. Meaning to say, what else can we do for the self, no, than to make it better, if not best, no? For Merleau-Ponty, the answer is that utilize all those perceptions that would help you to better identify yourself, to give the best identification of yourself. The body, the perceived world, and the people around you. What you know of yourself, trying to identify your strength, your abilities, ang mga butang nga maayo ka, and be challenged also to know the things that you are not good at, that you are weak or worse at, and then try to triangulate it. When I say triangulate, it means try to observe and to be open enough to the criticism of others, because after all, they are also perceiver of you. The good thing there is, if these people are really would really try to help you improve yourself, then they will try to criticize you for the purpose of improving yourself, you know? And try to utilize those criticism of you, you know? So that having those perceptions, having those criticisms, imong ma-accept sa imong kaugalingon, you will then be able to establish a whole, a total you, rather than you as a divided, a sum of kanang party ba, no? So that genuine acceptance, genuine manifestation of the self, acceptance in a manner that kaila ka sa imong kaugalingon, ug naay usa ka ikaw, dili nga sa matag lain-laing tawo nga imong ikahimamat, no? Imong i-encounter lahi-lahi pod nga personality ang imong gamiton. That is actually a disorder, no? Multiple personality disorder. Rather usara, no? Ug kaning usa nga ikaw, mo ni imong tarungon, mo ni imong i-improve. Okay? So at the end, for Merleau-Ponty, perception guides our action based from what our experiences are. The body perceives while our consciousness provides the meaning or interprets the various perception we have in the world, and the self would establish by the perceptions we have in the world, whereas one's action, behavior, and language use could be said to be the reflection of our united perception of the world. So, usara ka. O gamita to again, no? Ang criticism, ang perception sa naglain-laing tao, sa mga ikahimamat nimo, and if they will criticize you, then accept them, because at the end, before we will end this lecture on philosophical understanding of the self, There's this one philosopher named Friedrich Nietzsche or Nietzsche. He said, that which cannot kill you, things, events, criticism that cannot kill you will make you stronger. That would be all for now. Thank you and see you sa ato ang next nga lecture for the psychological perspective.